Hey YouTube, it's me, Kenneth Ryan, and I'm here again with another episode of Talkin' About Stuff. This time, we actually have a topic suggested by a viewer, which I'm going to pull up on my computer real quick. This topic was suggested by Lydia Fulweiler, and she said, please talk about what it's like to write something. First and foremost, I'm going to say that from my experience and what I know about writing, mostly creative-based writing, what works for me may or may not work for you because we are different people. So what I'm going to talk about, I guess, is what it's like to write something for me, and bits and pieces of what I say might help you, or you might have to try something different. I'm definitely not an expert. In fact, I don't think anyone can be an expert on something as broad as writing or art or anything creative like that. First and foremost, I guess what it's like to write something is you're kind of stuck in the limbo where you need inspiration. At least I find. Like the first step is to get inspiration, and that can come from anywhere, and any unexpected source can just be like, hey, inspiration, do this. The biggest example I have of that is the idea for roommates stemmed from... Oh, also, I noticed in my last video, I'm going to segue here. I noticed in my last video, I keep doing it now, I keep looking at myself in like the little viewfinder, so I'm like not looking at the camera, and it's totally obvious, and I'm sorry, I'm going to do better. Back to what I was saying, okay, step one, find inspiration, and that's basically where any creative project really starts, and the biggest example I have, again, is with roommates, where the inspiration of that came from. I was hanging out with my friend Abby, who is the director of photography, as well as she portrayed Sarah for the first 6 episodes. I was hanging out at her house, and I was like, I have this camera, but I don't know what to write, I don't know what to film, I want to get something done before you guys go off to college. And she was just like, well, what if, like, Bethany, Lindsay, myself, and you, what if we were, like, roommates? And it just, right then, that's when it clicked. I was like, that's perfect. Change the names, give everyone, like, specific character types. The 4 of us portray the characters, we have a show. That was where the inspiration for, that project came from. And then that was finished, and we had to start a new project. And it was just always, with the creative process, it's always about, like, you're going to get that burst of inspiration. You're going to be like, that's what I want to work on. And then you're going to work on it, basically, is what I found. Second thing, I guess, is if this is going to be a step-by-step on writing, I don't know if it should be. The second thing that I do then usually is, it's usually outline, which is funny because when I was in school, middle school, high school, and they're always like, outline your papers, do this because it's going to help, I'd be like, I don't need to, because I was 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, and I knew better than my teachers knew, obviously, and I didn't need an outline, and which was true for a lot of those papers, because, a 5-paragraph essay doesn't necessarily need an outline. I found, you might need one, I'm not saying that it's bad if you need one, whatever, but I found definitely it is helpful to outline any series, any project that you're going to do in terms of long-term writing, be it a novel. I'm sure an outline would be very helpful for. My area of expertise is screenplays, or just scripts to be filmed, so that's basically what I know. It's definitely helpful to outline a series, or outline, like, the major acts of a short film, or of a, like, even the individual acts of an episode, though nothing I've written is really long enough in terms of episode length to have separate acts. It just kind of all falls into place. But it's definitely helpful to outline this and know where you want your characters to end up, where you want the plot to end up. It's helpful to outline, so I would definitely suggest that. That is definitely the second thing that I do, and that can take a pretty lengthy period of time, because sometimes you get the inspiration and you get, like, the first character down and, like, the general skeleton of the outline done, and then you're dead inside for inspiration for God knows how long. Oops. 3, the third thing, the earnest 3 thing that I do, I don't know why I said, I don't know. The third thing that I definitely find myself doing is, once I finish the outline, then you start writing it. And that's where the scary part comes. That's where the writer's block really kicks in if it hasn't already. That's where you get, like, bursts of inspiration and 7 pages flow out wonderfully, and they're like 7 wonderful pages that don't need tweaking, and then where do you go from here? And you're stuck. And then you have to make a choice, and I choose between multiple things. You know, you can either keep writing, which I've done, and I found that sometimes you just have to write 1 or 2 pages of really gross, awful text that you're not going to use, and then all of a sudden your brain clicks and it's like, this is what I want to say. You know, boom, this is what I want to say. And then you get rid of what you didn't want, and you get into what you wanted to say. You could also, you could take a break. I've definitely done that. And you just distract yourself for an hour, 2 hours a day, maybe, depending on how much time you need. And you sit down and you're just like, I'm going to distract myself and I'm going to play Pokemon. And then while you're in the middle of a battle against Brock or whatever, you're going to be like, oh, Jasmine climbs the ladder in that scene, so obviously what she's going to find at the top of the ladder, I don't know, but you just get like that brief burst, and then you go back to it, and you get it down. Definitely don't give up, though, when writer's block kicks in. Definitely don't look at your project and be like, this is horrible garbage, and I don't know what to say, so obviously I need to abandon it. I don't do that. It's okay to put it off to the side for a while. It's okay to be like, all right, I don't know what I want to do with this. Worry about it later. But definitely come back to it, because I think that every project is worth that. Unless you know the project's bad. I've definitely written projects that were sort of just filler projects that I knew weren't going to become anything. They were just to keep my brain moving in the creative writing way. And then you can give up on those. But anything that you're really dedicated to and anything you really like, feel strongly for, even if you don't know what to say right now, don't give up on it. At least that's my humble little advice. So then there's the 4th thing, and this is going to come a long time later, because it takes a long time to write, and don't let anyone tell you differently. Writing is one of the hardest things I think I've ever had to do, because I don't know, anybody who's a writer can probably tell you, and they'll agree with me, that it's tough, because you have this idea of what you want in your head, and you see it yourself. But then when you're writing it or typing it, because I do everything on the computer, you get to the point where you're just like, okay, I know what I see. How do I describe it in a way so everyone can see what I see? How do I make it so everyone sees the vision that I have of this project? And that is it's so hard. It's going to take, depending on the length of your thing, weeks, months. Some novels, I'm sure, even take years to write. I've never written anything that extensive. I think the longest script I've ever written is like 53 pages. And that took me about 2 weeks to write, and I'm still in the process of editing it and adding to it and taking out parts that I don't like. But yeah, I'm tangenting. Basically, once you're done writing, which is going to take a long time, you get to the 4th thing that I would do, and that would be to edit it. Now, you're not going to jump into this right away. Once you finish your project, you're going to set it aside for a day, 2 days, a week. Give yourself a vacation from the project and let your mind kind of forget about it just a little bit, so that when you go back to edit it, you're looking at it with new eyes, and you're like, okay, read through it. So what you need to do, is set it aside for a length of time, and then you come back to it and then you're going to read through it. You're going to notice where the dialogue doesn't make sense. You're going to notice where descriptions are inconsistent. You're going to catch places where you should have expanded, because you're like, this doesn't get across what I was seeing when I was writing it. And so editing is definitely going to take a long time too, because you're going to look over it more than once. You're not going to write it, look over it once, and then ship it out to be published or ship it out to be made. Unless you're writing Roommate Season 1, in which case you do that because that's how you wanted to write it, but that's an entirely different thing. I'll talk about it some other time. But basically, you're going to read over it one time, set it off to the side again for a couple days, work on another project, go back to it, read it through again, fix more things that you notice, set it off again, go back to another project you're working on, or just relax for a little bit, come back to it, and you're going to keep doing this until one time you come back to it, you read through it, and you're like, this is it. This is what I want. And then you're going to go on and you're going to make it. In my case, that would be the 5th step. And because everything I write is a screenplay, you're going to work on filming it. And that's not really talking about writing, so I don't need to include in this video, I don't think. Just something, I guess, to add. So basically those are the... Why? Why? Okay, give me a second. Alright, so the video stopped recording. Just out of the blue, it was like, video has stopped recording, so I don't know how this is going to edit in. I sort of forgot what I was saying. Sorry about that, so we're just going to jump back in. I got through, I think, the 5 things that I kind of do when I write something. I briefly touched up on all of them. If you want more information on any of them, please let me know, and I can talk about just the process of one of those steps. With any creative venture, know that you're going to be putting a lot of work into it, and you might not get a whole lot out of it, especially when you're small. But what you get out in terms of, like, monetary reward, as nice as that is, isn't really as important as, like, making the thing, if that makes sense. And especially when it comes to writing, expect to put blood, sweat, and tears into your projects. There are going to be some days where you just can't think of anything to write, and that happens, and you gotta put something down, you know. I think one of the easiest ways to write is to make sure that you are writing every single day, because that's going to keep your body in the, you know, the habit. That's what I was looking for. The nun hat. You're going to be in the nun hat of writing every day, and that's going to make it easier to at least get something down. I think the only time when you're writing a project that you shouldn't be writing in it every day is when you're at the point where you need to edit it, because that's when you need to set it off to the side and give yourself a break from it. That's definitely the most important part of editing, is just setting it off to the side and not caring about it for a while. Another thing that I think would be good to keep in mind when dealing with writing and when writing anything is definitely, it's gonna seem worse to you than it is to other people, because you are your own worst critic, and I know that from experience, and I think everybody who's ever done anything creative, be it writing, acting, art, singing, playing an instrument, you think you're the worst thing ever when you hear yourself make a mistake. And I think it's more, it's less obvious when you make a mistake as a writer to the audience. My foot's asleep. My foot fell asleep. Shut up. No, don't do that. It's like, it's tingling. It's wonderful. And by that I mean painful. Stop. I think I've talked about at least I at least glossed the surface or glazed the surface. I don't know what the correct terminology is. I've at least like touched the surface of what it's like to write. I can definitely elaborate on any of these various points or all of them if the interest is there for me to do that. If this video does anything, I hope it inspires you to like look at writing and say, hey, here's someone who writes and he says, you know, it's not the easiest thing. So when I'm writing, I being you know, and it doesn't feel like it's easy, that's a unanimous feeling. I'm not the only one who feels that way, and I hope that should you pursue writing, that you don't give up on it, and that, you know, you do consider making an outline and doing all this stuff, because I do believe that that's incredibly helpful. And if anything, I hope that anyone who is a writer can listen to this and be like, hey, that's pretty good advice. It's pretty helpful. And I hope that I do help some people who are looking into writing, or if anything, I've entertained you with my weird technical talk and lack of good jokes. Oops. Sometimes I forget to make the funnies. Yeah, so that's just about it. If you have any suggestions for an episode of Talking About Stuff, please leave it down below. If you have not already, be sure to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I greatly appreciate that. And, of course, I will see you next week with another episode of Talking About Stuff. Until then, be awesome, kitties. I'm rooting for you. Bye! Oh my, you can hear my bed. Just listen to that. Listen to those acoustics in my bed springs. As I'm doing the windshield wipers. Yes. Alright. Bye. Oh my god.